Welcome to the HFY Tales channel. Remember to like and subscribe if you like the story. Enjoy and take care.
The towering palace of Queen Zelaria stood as a testament to millennia of the Drelith Empire's power. Its obsidian walls gleamed under the pale light of the twin moons, casting long shadows across the polished floors. Intricate murals of past battles and conquests adorned the walls, each telling a story of victory, discipline, and order. Inside, alien guards, their bodies adorned with silver armor, stood motionless as statues. Captain Marcus Hale, representing humanity, walked through the grand hallways, his boots tapping against the shimmering tiles beneath him. His gaze flickered over the opulence, but his thoughts were centered on the upcoming meeting with Queen Zelaria. He had been briefed on her ruthless, cunning, and revered by her people. What the briefings had not prepared him for, however, was the undercurrent of tension that accompanied this meeting. "Captain Hale," a soft, melodic voice called, breaking the silence. Marcus turned, his eyes falling on a Drelith servant. She stood tall, towering over him by nearly a foot, her skin a deep shade of violet that shimmered with an almost metallic sheen. Her silver eyes, characteristic of the Drelith species, studied him with a mixture of curiosity and formality. "The Queen is ready for you," she said, gesturing down a long corridor lined with tapestries depicting the galaxy's most brutal wars. "Thank you," Marcus replied, his voice steady. He straightened his uniform and followed her down the corridor. As he neared the doors to the Queen's chambers, he couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. Humanity was still a newcomer on the galactic stage, and this meeting would be pivotal in determining the future of relations between Earth and the Drelith Empire. The Drelith were not known for their openness to outsiders, and Queen Zelaria's reputation for rigid discipline made her a particularly difficult figure to negotiate with. The massive doors creaked open, revealing a vast chamber bathed in the soft glow of alien crystal lamps. In the center of the room, upon an elevated throne of black stone, sat Queen Zelaria. Her presence was overwhelming. She was tall, even by Drelith standards, her regal posture emphasized by the long, flowing robes of deep indigo and silver that cascaded around her. Her eyes, a piercing silver like those of her people, locked onto Marcus as he entered. "Captain Marcus Hale," Zelaria greeted, her voice smooth, yet commanding. "I trust your journey here was without issue." Marcus bowed slightly, as was custom. "Yes, Your Majesty. I am honored to be in your presence." Zelaria's lips curved into a small smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Humanity has piqued my interest in recent cycles. I have heard many tales of your species' adaptability. Is it true that humans thrive in situations where most others falter?" Marcus hesitated, unsure of the direction this conversation was taking. "Humans have a reputation for being versatile, yes. We adapt to survive." The Queen's silver gaze seemed to study him, as if she were weighing his words against some unspoken expectation. She leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping into a more intimate tone. "And in more personal matters, do humans also adapt as easily?" Marcus's heart skipped a beat. He had been warned that the Drelith had their own ways of testing outsiders, but this felt like something else entirely. "I'm not sure I understand your question, Your Majesty," he replied carefully. A faint smile touched the Queen's lips again, but this time it was different, mischievous, almost playful. "Your people are not as rigid as mine, Captain. The Drelith are bound by tradition, by rules. We engage in our rituals, even in matters of physical intimacy, with precision and order. But humans," her gaze softened, curiosity evident. "Humans are said to embrace a freedom we have long forgotten. I wish to know more." Marcus felt the weight of her words pressing on him, but he kept his composure. "Freedom is a key aspect of our culture, Your Majesty. We value individuality and the ability to choose our paths." "Indeed," Zelaria said, rising from her throne. She was taller than he'd realized, her form graceful and intimidating. "It is this freedom that intrigues me. You see, Captain, for all my power and all my knowledge, there are some things I have not experienced. I am bound, like my people, by the limitations of tradition." She began to circle him slowly, her eyes never leaving his face. "You have no such restrictions. Your people are said to be adaptable, even in the most intimate of circumstances. Is that true? Marcus's throat felt dry, but he nodded. Yes, Your Majesty. Humans have this certain versatility. Zalaria paused in front of him, her expression thoughtful. Then, Captain Hale, I have a proposition for you. I wish to experience this adaptability for myself. For a moment, Marcus wasn't sure he'd heard her correctly. The air in the room seemed to thicken with the weight of her words. Your Majesty, you heard me correctly, Captain, Zalaria said, her voice a low purr. I wish to understand this aspect of humanity firsthand. You will indulge me in this request. Marcus stood there, processing Queen Zalaria's proposition. His training had prepared him for political negotiations, for navigating the complex web of interstellar diplomacy. But this was far beyond the scope of anything he had imagined. His heart pounded in his chest as he carefully chose his words. Your Majesty, Marcus began, keeping his tone as neutral as possible. I must admit, this is not the type of request I expected. Are you sure that this is the best way for us to foster relations between our species? Zalaria's eyes sparkled with something akin to amusement, and she took a step closer, her towering figure casting a shadow over him. Do not mistake this for frivolity, Captain. This is more than just a request to satisfy my curiosity. It is about exploring the potential between our people. We Dralith are bound by strict tradition, but perhaps it is time we learn to embrace something new. Marcus could feel the intensity in her gaze, her desire for something beyond the rigid customs of her people. Despite the unease rising within him, there was also a sense of duty, and, if he was honest with himself, a growing curiosity. This wasn't just a proposition born from idle whim. It was something deeper, something that could reshape the relationship between their worlds. I understand, Your Majesty, he said after a moment's thought, but I must ask, are you certain this is what you want? Queen Zalaria raised her head slightly, the regal composure still in place, but with an unmistakable glint of anticipation in her eyes. I have ruled for many cycles, Captain. My people look to me for strength, for discipline. But there are limits to that discipline, limits I wish to test. I have lived bound by tradition, by rules. But now, I want to know what it is like to experience something different. You, a human, represent that difference. Her words hung in the air, and Marcus felt the gravity of the moment. This wasn't just a test of their physicality. This was a test of cultural boundaries, of the possibilities that could emerge from two very different worlds coming together. His mind raced with the implications, and yet, deep down, he felt the pull of something more personal, a connection to this queen, who was so different from him, yet shared the same yearning for something beyond their predefined roles. Marcus took a deep breath and stepped closer to the queen, locking eyes with her. If this is what you wish, Your Majesty, then I will do my best to honor your request. Zalaria's lips curled into a small, almost imperceptible smile. Good. Then we shall begin. The queen gestured for Marcus to follow her, leading him through an intricately carved archway at the back of her throne room. Beyond it lay a more private chamber, a space filled with soft, glowing light and alien silks draped along the walls. The scent of exotic flowers filled the air, and the atmosphere was heavy with a sense of intimacy and privacy. Zalaria moved with the grace of a dancer, every step deliberate and fluid. Marcus followed her, his senses heightened. He was aware of every detail, the cool air against his skin, the soft rustle of her robes, the distant hum of alien technology. As they entered the room, the queen turned to face him, her silver eyes gleaming with a mix of anticipation and curiosity. You must understand, Captain Hale, she said, her voice low and melodic. This is not simply about indulgence. This is about exploring the boundaries of what our species can share. Marcus nodded, his breath catching in his throat as Zalaria moved closer. She towered over him, her presence overwhelming, but there was a vulnerability in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She was a queen, yes, but at this moment, she was also someone seeking something beyond the confines of her station. Zalaria raised a hand, gently tracing a line down Marcus's cheek, her touch surprisingly soft for someone of her stature. Your people, she murmured, are said to be capable of things my kind cannot even imagine. I wish to know what that feels like." The intimacy of her words, combined with her closeness, sent a shiver through Marcus. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him. This wasn't just about fulfilling a request. It was about bridging the gap between their worlds, about connecting on a level that transcended mere physicality. Marcus reached out, resting his hand lightly on Zalaria's arm. "Then let us explore that together," he said softly. For the first time, Marcus saw a flicker of vulnerability in the Queen's eyes. It was fleeting, but it was there, a glimpse of the woman behind the regal mask. She took his hand in hers, and together they moved toward the center of the chamber, where a large, plush surface awaited them. What followed was an exploration of contrasts, her imposing stature against his more compact frame, her graceful strength against his adaptability. Each movement was a discovery, a testament to the differences between their species and the beauty of those differences. Zalaria was surprised at how easily Marcus shifted, how he seemed to know exactly where to move, as if his body was designed for this very thing. As their encounter progressed, it became clear to both of them that this was more than just a physical exchange. There was a connection, a shared understanding that went beyond words. Zalaria's curiosity was no longer about simply testing human versatility. It had transformed into a desire to understand, to feel what it meant to be free of the rigid constraints of her own culture. Marcus, in turn, found himself drawn to Zalaria in ways he hadn't anticipated. She was powerful, yes, but also deeply complex. Her strength was matched by a yearning for something more, something that had been denied to her by the weight of tradition. When it was over, they lay side by side, the silence between them filled with unspoken thoughts. Zalaria's gaze was distant, as if she were contemplating the enormity of what had just transpired. "I never imagined," she began, her voice softer than before. "I never imagined that there could be so much freedom in something so simple." Marcus turned to her, watching as the Queen, so powerful, so controlled, allowed herself to relax in his presence. "Freedom is something we cherish," he said quietly. "But it's not always easy. It comes with challenges, with uncertainties." Zalaria met his gaze, her silver eyes filled with a newfound understanding. "Perhaps that is what I have been missing," she said, her voice thoughtful. "The uncertainty, the lack of control, it is both terrifying and exhilarating." Marcus smiled gently. "It's what makes us human." For a long moment, they simply lay there, the air between them heavy with the weight of their shared experience. Eventually, Zalaria sat up, her regal composure returning, though her expression was softer than before. "This has been enlightening," she said, her tone formal once more, though there was a warmth in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "You have given me much to think about, Captain Hale. And you, Your Majesty, have given me an experience I will never forget," Marcus replied. The soft glow of the alien lamps filled the room, casting a tranquil light over the two figures as the intense atmosphere between them began to settle. Queen Zalaria, now composed, gazed at Marcus with a mixture of curiosity and something deeper, something she hadn't anticipated. Marcus, though physically exhausted from the encounter, felt a quiet satisfaction. Not only had he honored her request, but he had also learned more about the Queen as an individual rather than just a powerful ruler. He had connected with her in a way that transcended the usual boundaries of diplomacy. As Queen Zalaria stood and gracefully moved toward the long, intricately carved window that overlooked the vast city of her empire, Marcus followed her gaze. The city stretched out endlessly beneath them, lights flickering like stars on the surface of an alien world. The view was breathtaking, but Marcus couldn't help but feel the gravity of the moment still lingering in the room between them. Zalaria's voice broke the silence, soft but filled with contemplation. "In all my cycles of ruling, I never allowed myself to imagine that such freedom could exist in something so intimate. My people are bound by tradition, by rules that dictate every aspect of our lives. For too long, I believed that control was power." Marcus remained silent, letting her speak. There was a vulnerability in her words, a rare glimpse into the mind of a ruler who had always been perceived as unshakable. She turned to face him, her regal posture softening ever so slightly. But now, I see that there is power in letting go, in embracing the uncertainty of the moment. What I have learned from you, Captain Hale, is something I could never have gained from my own people. You have shown me the value of freedom, both in body and in spirit. Marcus felt a surge of emotion in his chest. He had come here as a representative of humanity, expecting to engage in political talks and perhaps negotiate alliances. Instead, he had shared something far more personal, something that could redefine the relationship between their species. "I'm honored, Your Majesty," Marcus said, bowing his head slightly in respect. "But I believe you've given me just as much in return. I've learned that even the strongest among us have desires, vulnerabilities, and a need for connection." Queen Zelaria studied him for a moment, her silver eyes reflecting the city lights behind her. "Connection," she echoed, the word rolling off her tongue as if it were foreign to her. Yes, that is what this was. A connection not just of flesh, but of minds, of understanding. Perhaps this is what my empire has been missing for so long. She walked slowly back toward him, her regal presence once again filling the room. "You will leave this palace and return to your people, Captain. But what has transpired here will remain between us. It is not something the galaxy is ready for." Marcus nodded, understanding the delicate nature of their encounter. "Of course, Your Majesty. This is a personal matter, and I will honor your request." A moment of silence passed between them, heavy with unspoken emotion. Then Zelaria did something unexpected. She extended her hand to him, a gesture of equality, something unheard of from a ruler of her stature. Marcus took her hand in his, feeling the warmth of her touch. "There is more than politics that binds us now, Captain Hale," she said quietly. "There is trust, and perhaps even something more." Marcus held her gaze, feeling the weight of her words. It wasn't just about their species or their political standing. It was about the connection they had forged, one that could transcend the boundaries of their respective worlds. "I will not forget this, Your Majesty," Marcus said, his voice steady. "And neither will I." For a moment, they simply stood there, two beings from vastly different worlds, sharing a quiet, profound understanding. Then, with a final nod, Marcus released her hand and stepped back, preparing to leave. As he turned to go, Zelaria's voice called after him, softer than before. "Marcus!" He paused, turning back to face her. "Should the opportunity arise, I would like to explore more of what your people have to offer. Perhaps there is more we can learn from each other." A smile touched Marcus's lips. "I'd be honored, Your Majesty. Until then, I hope this is just the beginning." With that, Marcus made his way toward the grand doors of the chamber, feeling the weight of what had transpired settle over him like a cloak. As he left, the faint scent of the exotic flowers lingered in the air, a reminder of the encounter he would never forget. The doors closed behind him with a soft thud, leaving Queen Zelaria alone in the chamber. She stood still for a moment, her thoughts racing. The experience had been unlike anything she had ever known, not just the physicality of it, but the connection, the sense of freedom that had eluded her for so long. For the first time in her long reign, Queen Zelaria allowed herself to wonder if there was a different path ahead for her people, a path where tradition and rigidity could give way to something more fluid, more adaptable, more human. Several weeks had passed since Marcus's departure, but the memory of their encounter lingered in Queen Zelaria's mind. She had resumed her duties as the ruler of the Dralith Empire, but something had changed. The rigid structure of her daily routine now felt suffocating, and the once comforting traditions of her people seemed incomplete. Sitting on her throne, she glanced at the holographic reports of the Empire's progress, her mind wandering back to Marcus and the freedom he had shown her. It was a feeling she couldn't shake, a desire to experience more of what humanity had to offer, both culturally and personally. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts, and one of her advisors entered the throne room, bowing deeply. "Your Majesty, there is a message from the human delegation. Captain Hale sends his regards." Zelaria's heart quickened at the mention of his name, though she maintained her regal composure. "And what does Captain Hale have to say?" The advisor handed her a small data pad, which displayed a brief but respectful message from Marcus. He spoke of the growing relationship between their people, hinting at future opportunities for collaboration and understanding. But at the end, there was a personal note, one that was meant only for her. Perhaps one day, Your Majesty, we will have the chance to explore the depths of our connection once again. Until then, I will carry the memory of our time together with me always. Queen Zalaria allowed herself a rare, private smile as she read his words. There was something in her that longed for that day, for the opportunity to continue what they had begun. As she stood and gazed out over her empire, she knew that the future held possibilities she had never before considered, and in the quiet of her throne room, she made a silent vow to explore them, both for herself and for the Drelith people. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, Queen Zalaria welcomed the uncertainty with open arms. The weeks following Marcus's departure had stirred more within Queen Zalaria than she had anticipated. The sensation of freedom she had tasted that night with the human had awakened something profound in her. The rigidity of the Drelith traditions now seemed stifling, like chains that had bound her not only as a ruler, but as a person. She had ruled with strength, but for the first time, Zalaria questioned whether strength alone was enough. Had she, in her pursuit of maintaining control over her empire, denied herself and her people the chance to evolve? The Drelith had always valued order, predictability, and structure, and yet, in the short time Marcus Hale had spent within her palace, he had shown her the beauty of embracing uncertainty, of allowing the unknown to guide her steps. She stood at the grand balcony of her palace, overlooking the sprawling capital city of her empire. The vastness of it all stretched before her like a reminder of the weight she carried on her shoulders. But now, that weight felt different, lighter perhaps, because she had glimpsed a future where her rule could be something more than just the enforcement of ancient traditions. As the twin moons illuminated the horizon, Zalaria's thoughts returned to Marcus's message, his promise to remember their time together, his subtle suggestion of future encounters. It filled her with an excitement she had long forgotten. She could not shake the image of him from her mind, nor the connection they had shared. It had been more than just a physical experience. It was a crossing of boundaries, a bridging of worlds, and it had left her with an insatiable desire to learn more, not just about humanity, but about herself. Your Majesty, a voice called softly from behind her. Zalaria turned to see her closest advisor, General Radhar, standing at the entrance of the balcony. His tall, muscular frame exuded the discipline and strength that all Drelith warriors were known for. His expression, however, was unusually solemn. "Yes, General?" Zalaria asked, her voice measured. "The Council has received your proposal for cultural integration with the humans," he said, stepping closer. "They are hesitant." Zalaria smiled, a knowing look passing over her face. "Of course they are. The Council has always been hesitant to embrace change. They fear what they do not understand." Radhar bowed his head slightly. "With all due respect, Your Majesty, I must ask, what has led you to this decision? You have always been a champion of our traditions. The Council fears you are straying from the path that has kept our empire strong." Zalaria's gaze drifted back toward the horizon. "The path that has kept us strong, yes, but also bound. I have seen a different way, Radhar, a way that allows for both strength and freedom. The humans have shown me that there is power in adaptability, in letting go of the rigidity that has defined us for so long." Radhar hesitated for a moment, clearly wrestling with his thoughts. "Your Majesty, I trust your judgment, but the Council will not easily accept this. They believe that the Drelith should remain as we have always been, unbending, untouchable. They see the humans as a lesser." "Do you believe that, Radhar?" Zalaria asked, her eyes sharp. The general straightened, meeting her gaze. "No, Your Majesty. I have seen what they are capable of. The human Captain Hale. He impressed me during his stay. But my loyalty is to you, and whatever path you choose, I will follow." Zalaria regarded him with a sense of gratitude. "Thank you, Radhar. I need your support now more than ever. The Council must come to understand that change is not a weakness. It is an opportunity." She turned fully to face him, her expression firm. "And if they cannot see that, then I will show them." Rather's eyes widened slightly. "You mean to challenge the council?" Zalaria's smile was cold but determined. "If they refuse to allow our empire to evolve, then yes, I will challenge them. I will not see the Drelith fall into stagnation because of fear. The humans represent something new, something we must embrace if we are to survive in the future." Rathar nodded, a newfound respect in his gaze. "I will stand by you, your majesty, whatever comes." Zalaria gave him a nod of appreciation before turning back to the view of her city. She could feel the storm brewing on the horizon, not just within the council, but within her empire itself. The Drelith were not a people who embraced change easily, and she knew that her decision to open their culture to new influences, especially from humanity, would be met with resistance. But resistance did not frighten her. Not anymore, because she had tasted freedom, and she would not allow her people to remain shackled to outdated traditions that no longer served them. The following day, Zalaria stood before the Grand Council of the Drelith Empire, her regal presence commanding the attention of every member seated in the vast circular chamber. The air was thick with tension, as the councilors whispered among themselves, casting wary glances at the queen. At the head of the council, an elder Drelith named Vorton, who had long served as a guardian of the Empire's most sacred traditions, spoke first. "Your Majesty," Vorton's voice echoed through the chamber, "we have received your proposal for deeper integration with the humans. It is bold, but many of us question the wisdom of such a decision. The Drelith have thrived for millennia because of our adherence to tradition. Why, then, should we abandon what has kept us strong?" Zalaria's gaze was steady as she faced the council. "I am not asking you to abandon our traditions, Counselor Vorton. I am asking you to allow us to grow. The humans have shown me that there is strength and flexibility in adapting to the world around us. If we continue to cling to the old ways without questioning them, we will be left behind." A murmur ran through the council, but Zalaria raised her hand, silencing them. "I do not seek to weaken the Drelith Empire. I seek to strengthen it. The world beyond our borders is changing, and we must change with it. The humans represent an opportunity for us to learn, to evolve." Vorton frowned, his leathery face creased with age and doubt. "And what have the humans shown you, your majesty, that makes you believe they are worthy of such integration?" Zalaria paused for a moment, her mind flashing back to her night with Marcus Hale. The memory of their connection, of the freedom she had experienced in his presence, filled her with resolve. "They have shown me," she said, her voice firm, "that there is more to power than control, that true strength comes from understanding, from connection. The humans are not lesser, Vorton. They are different, and it is in that difference that we will find our future." The chamber fell silent, the weight of Zalaria's words settling over the council like a heavy shroud. For a moment no one spoke. Then, slowly, Vorton nodded, though his expression remained guarded. "Perhaps," he said quietly, "there is wisdom in your words, your majesty. But change is never easy. You will face opposition." Zalaria's gaze was unwavering. "I have faced many challenges in my reign, counselor. This will be no different. But I believe in the strength of our people, and I believe that we can rise to meet this challenge." Vorton bowed his head in deference, his voice low. "Then you have our support, your majesty. May the stars guide you." Zalaria's heart swelled with a sense of victory, but it was tempered by the knowledge that this was only the beginning. The path ahead would be difficult, fraught with challenges, but she was ready. For the first time in her long reign, she felt truly alive. As the council session ended, Zalaria made her way back to her private chambers, her mind racing with the possibilities of the future. She could feel the winds of change sweeping through her empire, and she knew that she had set something in motion that could not be stopped. And as she stood at her balcony once more, gazing out at the city that had been her home for so long, she felt a sense of peace. The future was uncertain, yes, but for the first time, she welcomed that uncertainty with open arms. Because now, she knew that the Drelith Empire would not just survive, it would thrive.